All right. Welcome back to another live with me. So my name is Lasita. I'm a graduate from KDU University. I've just finished my MBBS degree. And today we are going to talk about some of the requirements that are needed to study medicine in KDU. Now, these are requirements that were based for intake 43, but they've almost been the same since intake 41. That's when the first local batch of students were taken for the course. And so most of the requirements will be the same. There might be certain changes that could occur to the tuition fees, but outside of that, the normal requirement for selection will almost stay the same. And obviously, if there were going to be changes, make sure to look for any updated videos that I'm going to be posting. Obviously, the selection process to select students for the moment being, it's not out there at KDU, so that's something that's going to pop up perhaps in the next few months towards the middle of this year. So stay tuned for those updates. Make sure to look at the KDU website quite often, perhaps once every week or so that you guys can get the updated information that you need regarding the course and how to apply for the course. And obviously, any of the information that's been provided here, make sure that you take it with a grain of salt. There's obviously, if there are additional things that you'd like to know, make sure to go through the KDU website, which will have the most updated information. And if there are queries about certain circumstances about your application, make sure to call the university, because we are not part of the admission office. So they are the ones that have all the required information that you require to make a proper informed decision of whether you're eligible to apply or not, right? So we are here just to answer some of the general queries that are being asked by a lot of candidates. And I know that today obviously a lot of people have received their A-level results, so they'll be quite enthusiastic at the moment, especially if you have received the right Z-score to study medicine. So with that said, we'll go through some of the important eligibility criteria that you're supposed to know to study medicine at KDU. So obviously the first thing is that you should have done a science stream in biology, chemistry, and physics, where you have set all your exams in one and the same sitting. So that means you can't combine grades that you have achieved during your different SHIs. So if you've done multiple SHIs, let's say that you've done 2 SHIs, you can't combine the grades that you got from your first SHI with your second SHI, right? So you'll only be looking at the results that you got from your second SHI. So keep that in mind. Now, there are some common requirements, like you have to be a citizen of Sri Lanka, you have to be between the age of 16 and 24 by the time of the closing date of application, and you can apply with your local A-levels as well as with your foreign A-level qualifications if you've done at Excel or Cambridge, things like that. And obviously the requirements from each varies. We will talk about those in a moment. And students are only allowed to sit up to 3 SHIs, right? So you can't go for more attempts than that. There are a lot of students that ask whether there's a possibility for us to retake the A-levels and see whether there's a possibility for us to apply then, but that's unfortunately not a possibility. You have to have done a common general test where you have obtained at least 30 marks or above, and you should have achieved a credit pass of C for English language at GCC at your O-level qualifications. So those are some of the requirements, common requirements. Now, outside of that, the most important requirement that you need at this point is your Z score. So when we look at a Z score, there are a lot of variations, a lot of things that need to be taken into account. Most people that get selected have a Z score of at least 1.7. So anything above 1.7, they have a really good chance of being selected. So if you're a 1.8, 1.9, you're obviously almost there to be selected, right? So there are additional things that need to be evaluated for you to be selected. But if you have a really high Z score like that, about 1.8, 1.9, you're definitely selected. Within the 1.7 criteria, it's a little bit questionable because there's a lot of competition. There are a lot of people with that Z score of. So you need to be able to assess those criteria and look how weak or how strong your 1.7 score is. If it's like 1.79, 1.78, obviously you have a really good chance of getting in. But if it's closer to the 1.7, like 1.71, 1.72, then chances are a little bit more minimal. So what can you do to that? You can increase your chances of getting in by doing things like sports activities, or there are other things that you can do, prizes like the presidential guides awards, things like that, that um, possibility of you to be selected. So there are certain marks that are being given if you've done those awards and those sports activities that will boost your Z score. And like last year within intake 43, there were a couple of students that had a Z score of about 1.5, and because they had done sports activities or the presidential guide awards or things like that, that were boosted within the 1.7 criteria and were selected to study medicine at KDU. So that's an important thing that you should remember from now on, whether you're doing your A levels or whether you're doing on the starting process of doing your A levels, then that's something that you can consider. So taking part into sports activities while you're studying is a good way on to boost your overall qualification, the Z score that you get at the end if you're thinking of studying medicine at KDU. Right. So to apply to KDU, you're able to do it with any Z scores, even if you're even with a Z score of 1, you can definitely apply. But the thing is, you're not going to be selected. The cutoff mark is 1.4. So anyone above 1.4 will be considered for the course. But the thing is, you have to keep in mind there are a lot of people within the 1.7 criteria that above that, even someone within 1.4 might not stand a chance unless you have done certain other achievements like sports activities or the presidential guides awards that will help you to boost your score. So that's something to consider. So if you have a Z score below 1.4, I would say you have no chances of being selected because everyone below 1.4 will be rejected, right? So there is even no point in making an application, right? So if you're above 1.4, I would say if you're around 1.5, that could be a good chance of you getting selected, especially if you've done sports activities or other achievements that can complement the overall Z score at the end. So essentially, that's the first part of your application to KDU. So it's where they are going to be looking at your Z score. Following your Z score, there's going to be a... Okay, before going to that, I'll talk also about Cambridge and Edexcel levels. So according to the criteria, you need 2 Bs and a C in order to be able to apply to KDU, but the thing is your chances to get selected with 2 Bs and a C are non-existent. You need to have a minimum of 3 As for your A-levels if you've done Cambridge and Excel to be selected. Anything below that is not going to be selected. So there are certain individuals that get selected with 2 A stars and a B, right? So obviously that's again very high compared to 3 As. It's almost equivalent of 1 A star and 2 As, right? So you need to have at least 3 As for your Excel exams, Excel or Cambridge exams. So the number of students that they select from each category is different. They give a high priority to students who have done the local A-levels. So there are about 70 to 90 students are going to be selected from the local criteria. And if you've done international exams like Cambridge and Excel, the numbers are going to be around 15 to 20. And it can vary between year to year, right? So obviously stay tuned for the most updated information that will be released when they open the admission process this year. I guess it's going to be some point around June, July, but things change every single year. Sometimes it's around August, September, sometimes starts in May, June, so it differs enormously, and there is no way on tell you exactly when that's going to happen, but you got to look at the KDU website to look for the most updated information. So that's the first part of the application process. Now, after they've filtered you through your Z scores, the next part of the application is going to be where they're going to do a few tests, which are not really relevant. It's not something that they take points on for your application. It's just a matter of you doing those tests for the sake of it. There's no real way of assessing you and selecting students based on these tests, but there are 4 papers that you're going to be doing. The first paper is an English language test where they look at your IQ and general knowledge. It's about 1 hour and 45 minutes long. Then they'll do a psychological assessment of about 45 minutes, and that's followed by subject-related knowledge of 2 hours and a special cognition test. So those are the tests that you'll have to do. But again, like I said, it's just a matter of doing those tests. You're not going to be assessed in any way for your selection process to the MBBS degree. So it's purely based on your Z scores and whether you've done any sports activities. So your Z scores are going to be counted up to 95%, if I'm not mistaken, and 5% is the total amount of marks that is allocated for any sports achievements or any other achievements that you have taken. And then finally, there's going to be a small interview. Again, they're not assessing you in any sort of way, but what they're trying to do through the interview is to assess the ability of you to pay for this degree and to, I suppose, find out a little bit about yourself, but nothing more than that, right? So there's no interview where they're assessing why you want to study medicine at KDU, where it's purely to see whether you have the financial capabilities to pay for the degree, and they'll ask for some bank statements and other things during that interview. But it's going to be literally a 3 to 5 minute interview where you're going to barely talk anyway. Okay, so those are the 3 assessment criteria, and then at the end, like I said, it's all based on your Z score and the sports achievement that you have achieved. So if you are selected, then based also on the ability for you to pay for the degree, which is up to last year for Intake 43, which started in January, it was about 1.75 million per semester. So with a total of 17.5 million for the full degree. So price has been changing year after year, so it's been increasing. So perhaps even this year for Intake 44, it might increase a little bit more. That's obviously something that it's questionable. So we, until obviously the admission criteria opens, we won't know exactly. But for the moment being, this has been increasing since Intake 41 2 years ago, and I believe that is going to increase a little bit further this year as well. So those are the criteria required to study at KDU. So obviously, if you guys have any questions regarding the process, you can ask your questions while this live video is going on, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So there were a few students that asked about their Z-scores. Z-score 1.28 is way too low. You're not going to be selected to for the course. There is no way. It has to be at least above 1.4 for your application to be considered. So don't make even an application if you don't have a Z-score above 1.4. There's literally no way that you're going to be selected. So if you're around 1.5, 1.6, you might stand a chance if you have done sports achievements or something like the President's Guide achievement, things like that can boost your overall score to be selected for the course. So there is going to be an open day coming up soon, where an open day, I know it's quite perhaps a new concept for here in Sri Lanka, but it's essentially an opportunity for students who want to study medicine at KDU to have a look at the university, to see what it is that KDU is able to offer the students, to know a little bit more about the course structure, the environment, so that you can get to know a little bit more about the course itself. There's the MBBS course that's being provided at KDU. And obviously, if you have any questions regarding Z-scores and everything, there'll be a lot of students as well as members of staff and lecturers that will be able to help you out and guide you through the process, and in a way relieve you from a lot of the questions that perhaps you have and you haven't been able to get an answer from the university, because it's very, very difficult to contact the university and get a straight answer from them. So this is an opportunity for all of you who are interested to study medicine, whether you're at your O-level stage or whether you've just started A-levels or whether you just got your A-levels today. It's an opportunity for you to come and to be able to talk to students who are currently studying and to answer a lot of questions that perhaps you have, and also to find out a bit more about the university and what are the facilities that the university is able to provide to its students. So I leave the platform now for you guys. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, feel free to drop them in the section below in the chat, and I'll be able to answer any of the questions that you have. So while doing that, I'm going to go through some of the basic requirements that are required from the students that we already mentioned at the beginning. Well, just to see whether anyone has any questions. I guess no one has any questions, right? So feel free to 3A important. It depends from whether you've done the local syllabus or edXLs or the international syllabus, right? So if you've done the international syllabus or Cambridge or edXL, 3A is the minimum requirement. I know that on the KD website they on the requirements they say 2 Bs and 1 C, but there is no way that you can get in with 2 Bs and a C. The minimum would be 3 As. Usually if you get 2 A stars and a B, that's also accepted. There are a few students that get in because that's the equivalent of 1 A star and 2 As if you get 2 A stars and a B. So there are students that get in with that, but otherwise the minimum would be 3 As, and there are also a few students that don't get in even though they have 3 As, right? So the A stars is what you're looking for, and there's also very high competition for international students who've done Cambridge and Excel, because they usually get about 100 to 150 applications per year, and within those they only select about 15 to 20. So it's a really big competition, and only the best grades will be, students with the best grades will be selected. For Z-scores, obviously it's different. Your Z-score has to be above 1.7 to be selected. For consideration, if you have it above 1.4 with sports activities, things like that, then you can be considered for the course. Okay, any other questions? All right, so if you have any other questions, obviously use the chat box, leave a comment, and I'll be able to answer them as soon as I get the notifications coming through. Okay, so thank you for attending today's live, and I'll see you guys in the next video.